Every brew down in Brewville liked Christmas a lot, but the Bill, who lived just north of Brewville, did not. The Bill hated Christmas, the whole Christmas season. Now, please don't ask why. No one quite knows the reason. It may be that old Bill just could not hold his liquor. No sizer, no saison, no lager, no bitter. But I think that the most likely reason of all may be that his liver was 2 sizes too small.
They've got Christmas Eve nog.
He snarled with a sneer.
Means tomorrow is Christmas. It's practically here.
Then he growled with his bill fingers nervously drumming.
I must find some way to stop Christmas from coming.
For tomorrow, he knew, but whatever the reason, his composure or liver, he stood there on Christmas Eve, hating the brews by the river. Staring in through the window with a sour bill frown at the red-faced beer drinkers from all over the town. For he knew every brew now packed into the pub, sharing Christmas Day plans of good times and good grub. All the brew women and all the brew males would wake up in the morning and reach for their ales, slept through Santa's visit in a deep winter's fog for a sip from the firkin, a hair of the dog. Then the brews, young and old, would sit down to a feast, and they'd feast and they'd feast, and they'd feast, 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 feast. They would feast on brew nachos and cheddar ale stew, which was something that Bill would just never do. And then they'd do something he liked least of all. Every brew down in Brewville, the tall and the small, would stand close together with Christmas bells ringing. They'd stand hand in hand, and the brews would start singing. They'd sing and they'd sing, and they'd sing, 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 sing. And the more old Bill thought of this brew Christmas sing, the more old Bill thought,
I must stop this whole thing. Why, for 53 years I put up with this now. I've got to stop Christmas from coming, but how?
Then he got an idea, an awful idea. Old Bill got a wonderful, awful idea.
I know just what to do.
Bill laughed in his throat, and he scavenged a Santa Claus hat and a coat, and he chuckled and clucked.
What a great Billy trick. With this hat and this coat, I'll look just like Saint Nick. Now all I need is a reindeer.
Old Bill looked around, but since reindeer are scarce, there were none to be found. Did that stop old Bill? No, the Bill simply said,
If I can't find a reindeer, make one instead.
So he called his pal Max, then he took some red thread, and he tied a big horn on top of his head. Then he loaded some bags and some empty old sacks in a ramshackle van, and he strapped in old Max. Then old Bill said,
Giddy up!
The van started across town, toward the pub where the brews were now all lying down. All the windows were dark, quiet snow filled the air, all the brews were now dreaming, sweet dreams without care.
This is the stop.
The old Billy Claus hissed, and he stomped to the door, empty bags in his fist. And he squeezed through the doorway, a rather tight fit.
Why use a chimney when everyone's lit?
He got stuck only once for a moment or two, the door jammed by a passed-out, loudly snoring brew. Where the little brew stockings all hung in a row,
These stockings
he grinned,
are the first things to go.
Then he slithered and slunk with a grin ear to ear round the pub, and he snagged every icy cold beer. There was holy smoke and lug tread, Stonewall, Lake of Bays, Steam Whistle, Northumberland, and West Coast IPA. Then old Bill very nimbly poured it all in his bag, dragged his loot out the front door, that old scallywag. Then he slunk to the icebox and stole the brew's snacks, their soup and their sandwiches, cheesy nacho stacks. Then he shoved all the food out the front door with glee.
And now,
Grinned old Bill.
I shall shove out the tree.
And old Bill grabbed the tree and he started to shove when he heard a small sound like the coo of a dove. He turned around fast and he saw a small brew, little Molly Lou brew, barely past age 2. Old Bill had been caught by this brew who was wee. His swearing awoke her. 'Twas nowhere PG. She stared at the bill and said,
Santa Claus, shush, why are you swearing stealing Christmas from us?
But you know that old Bill was so smart and so slick, he thought up a lie and he thought it up quick.
Why, my sweet little tot,
The fake Santa Claus lied.
there's a light on this tree that won't light on one side. So I'm taking it to my workshop, my dear. I'll fix it up there and bring it back here.
And his fib fooled the child, her curiosity beat.
Ignore Santa's language and go back to your seat.
And when Molly Lou Brew climbed back up on her seat, he gripped hold of the tree and shoved it out in the street. And then the last thing he took was the old garlic tile, the final sign of the rose, a deed oh so vile. And the kegs he left empty, foam and CO2, and just one spicy cheesy outside of the loo. It was 1:45, all the brews still asleep, Bill loading his van up, the bags in a heap. 100 feet from the pub he'd just plundered, Bill rode to the bridge, grabbed his heap, and wondered.
Pooh-pooh to the brew.
He was billishly humming.
They're finding out now that no Christmas is coming. They're just waking up. I know just what they'll do. Their mouths will hang open for a minute or two. Then all the brews down in Brewville will all go brew-hoo. That's a noise,
Grinned the Bill.
that I simply must hear.
So he paused, and the Bill put his hand to his ear. And he did hear a sound rising over the snow. It started out low, then it started to grow. But the sound wasn't sad. Why, this sound sounded merry. It couldn't be so, but it was merry, very. He stared down at Brewville. The Bill popped his eyes, then he shook. What he saw was a shocking surprise. Every brew down in Brewville, the tall and the small, was singing without any libation at all. He hadn't stopped Christmas from coming. It came. Somehow or another, it came just the same. And the Bill, with his bill feet ice cold in the snow, stood puzzling and puzzling.
How could it be so? Came without barley, it came without hops. It came without those brews, not even drinking a drop.
And he puzzled 3 hours till his puzzler was sore. Then Bill thought of something he hadn't before.
Maybe Christmas
He thought,
doesn't come from a drink. Maybe Christmas, perhaps, means more than I think.
and what happened then? Well, in Brewville they say that the Bill's small liver grew 3 sizes that day. The minute that Bill made his Yuletide revelation, he whizzed through the night toward the brew's celebration. He brought back the barley, the hops, and the yeast, no longer content to be such a beast. And old Bill smiled, a smile so grand, and finally indulged in his favorite craft brand.
You're a mean one, Mr. Grinch. You really are a heel. You're as cuddly as a cactus, you're as charming as an eel, Mr. Grinch. You're a bad banana with a greasy black heel. You're a cuddly as a
The smokier the better for me.